Subscribe to the Hit That Line Podcast Network, brought to you by Breeden RV Center. Breeden RV Center, family owned and operated, a no-pressure, laid-back atmosphere, and always home of the free maintenance for life.
Hey, this is Bob Harris from Football Diehards, and you're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday.
He's a fantasy football genius, okay?
Play action. Jackson looks right, throws over the middle. He's got a man wide open. One-hand catch for the touchdown, Mark Andrews.
This is Fantasy Football Sunday with Tye Richardson and Evan Gentry. Presented by the Arnold Team with Weichert Realtors in Harrison.
We're back.
Hey, welcome into Season 2, Episode 3 of Fantasy Football Sunday alongside Evan Gentry. I am Tye Richardson, and I want to remind everyone a message from the League of Fort Smith. The first track of Tektronic's 1989 album, Pump Up the Jam, the album was Pump Up the Jam. Simpler times, right? Barry Sanders was the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Joe Montana was drunkenly throwing touchdowns to whoever the fantasy football, and it wasn't even around yet. Fantasy owners didn't have to worry about if Saquon's paper knees would hold up long enough to make the playoffs, or how many ACLs the Ravens had left, or why Aaron Rodgers looked like he hadn't slept in months. Make your season like 1989. Keep it simple. Try to fight your Barry Sanders. And if you lose, drink like Joe Montana. Man, he was a heck of a tackler. And of course, pump up the jams. Best of luck this week from the League of Fort Smith. Now, as we've gone through a week of fantasy football, how did you fare in week number 1? I legitimately don't want. Did you win?
I won,
Actually,
yeah. High point. We won. Yeah, 2-quarterback league. We had Jameis, we had Jalen Hurts, we had Amari Cooper on Thursday night. It went about as well as it could.
Now, let me ask you something. Did Lamar's fumbles, I know it hurt you from a Ravens standpoint, but did it help you in fantasy since you were playing Lamar Jackson that night?
I mean, by the letter of the law, it did help me. The only way I would have lost that game is if he took off for like a 50-yard touchdown run, which was entirely possible. And I almost wish it would have happened because then the team I cheer for would have won. And that was the ultimate upside-down Twilight Zone experience I've ever had. And I'm always devoted to my team first. There's no deliberation on that. But it was just so bizarre because I did want to win in fantasy too and checking the numbers. And I had Justin Tucker too. So I'm like, look, death by 1,000 field goals. But you don't get to be picky in situations. Everyone who watches the NFL you don't get to be picky.
It was odd for you because we're watching Sunday Night Football and the Los Angeles Rams are beating the tar out of the Chicago Bears. And you were like, as long as Cooper Kupp doesn't have...
Or Darrell Henderson.
A big game.
Right.
Cooper Kupp has over 100 yards and a touchdown. Darrell Henderson has a touchdown. And you were not sitting pretty that night. And for you to be in a situation where your favorite team, your favorite quarterback in the NFL is playing you in fantasy, that's what I dealt with as a Packers fan, where Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers, whoever it may be, would just kill me week after week. That's why I kind of set the Phantom aside while I'm back into it. I just don't care if the Packers screw me over in fantasy. That's just part of it, but I'm ready to be back. So that's the Sunday night slate. Let's move on to what we saw on Thursday night between the New York Giants and the Washington football team. I love watching Chase Young play football. He is a beast. I know that y'all don't have a defensive specialist.
No, we don't.
Do
we do not.
If I had to choose my number one guy, it would be Chase Young.
You know, he has the fathead king of the city vibe to him early on, even as a defensive player and at a position that, Von Miller's and Khalil Mack's, there are headlines there for sure, but minus, offensive superstars other than Terry McLaurin, it does feel like for that franchise, which is a very historic franchise, undergoing a new name change now, Chase Young is the it guy. Chase Young Steakhouse named after him, mayor of the city for a day. He does feel like he's sort of the big man on campus, if you will, for the nation's capital. Primetime just keeps delivering. Every primetime game.
Good one this week.
Both Thursday night games have been awesome. Sunday night football was not as competitive. And then
I
the
still
Monday night
watch it
game
because of Justin Fields. That was my intrigue to Sunday night football.
He was the carrot there hanging over the game that you wanted to tune into. Storylines galore last night. No Ryan Fitzpatrick. The hip supplication. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I think the question is with Taylor Heineke, can he sustain the value you invested in certain football teams' players, i.e. Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson? Ryan Fitzpatrick is a mercenary. Okay, you kind of know what you're going to get. It might be a half a year, it might be a full year. There's going to be some good games, there's going to be some bad games, but his total, fly-by-night approach where 60 yards downfield and don't care sustains fantasy options. Last night, it was really good for Taylor Heineke. You had Terry McLaurin had a huge game.
Scary Terry.
Antonio Gibson, he didn't goose you. He didn't get in the end zone. The J.D. McKissick, the J.D. McKissick vulture had fantasy players in shambles.
After I dropped him, I did play Antonio Gibson last night, and luckily Dustin Hopkins for me. Dustin Hopkins through 2 weeks has been a stud. He outscored Antonio Gibson last night. I'm currently leading right now. The Thunder Ducks are up. Well, we got a lot of football go to this weekend, but I was a big fan of that.
And on the other side, you have Graham Gano. 5 or 6 field goals, 22 points. Heineke kind of has this look to him. He sort of has this. It's the headband, a blue-collar guy. He's someone easy to get behind, and people forget.
Would y'all say vibe checked? Would you say he's entered that echelon?
I'd say that's fair.
Okay.
Let's not forget the wild card game last year where he was really the only team to play competitively against the Buccaneers en route to a Super Bowl.
300 yards.
And people kind of wondered, is this a fluke? 3 games in, it doesn't appear to be a fluke for a guy who I think was teaching math last year before they called him up. What a story. And I'm really excited. He almost feels like he's going to be a part of NFL storylines week in and week out now, even at such an unlikely outlook initially.
Let's flip it to the other side of the ball. Daniel Jones has that one law run that was ended up called back. He didn't trip. I thought he was going to trip at some point, but he has the ability, passing and running, to at least give you excitement, because I know you have him in your 2-quarterback league, and what he was doing last night had to give you a little bit of encouragement to what he can be as your second quarterback this season.
He can look so bad at times with the fumbles and the interceptions, and he's the ultimate what in the world are you doing player when you see some of these passes nowhere close to his targets. And what he did with that keeper around the corner, taking off for 60 yards, outrunning safeties and scoring, called back because of a hold that didn't necessarily look valid.
Garbage call.
How many players in the NFL can do that? Just have that ability. It's Lamar Jackson, it's probably Trey Lance and Justin Fields. Are those the 3? I don't think Mahomes can do that. I don't think that, Rodgers, Jameis Winston, you pick your Matt Stafford. That is truly insane talent that he has to be that fast from a guy who looks like a librarian. But he gives you, and this is the hell I think Giants fans find themselves in, it's the Al Pacino. Once I'm out, they pull me back in. He can look as bad as you can be and then be on the money. And it's, do we move past this guy? Do we start planning for somebody else? He had games like last night, Thursday night, where he was awesome and really did enough to win. Had it not been for weird, out-of-world stuff happening.
Mm-hmm. Tough. So let's talk about some of his weapons. Sterling Shepard, your Oklahoma fella. Saquon Barkley, looking like he's getting a little light backs. You got Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton. I mean, who are you looking at in the Giants moving forward?
Did you see the Golladay Daniel Jones? It looked like a shouting match yesterday on the sidelines.
I did not see that. I was probably in bed by that point.
Is Daniel Jones the least likely guy in the NFL to go back at anyone yelling at him? I feel like he's power ranked at the very bottom of the list there, and guys, who's going to give it back to you. At this point, it's Saquon Barkley and it's Sterling Shepard. And Barkley didn't give you necessarily what you wanted. He had the big 41-yard run. It looks like he's having trouble getting through the line of scrimmage and having that burst that he had in his first 2 years and what made him truly special and worthy, arguably, of being the second overall draft pick. But at least it's encouraging because he's out there and he's healthy. Back when you drafted him in the summer.
Who's the center they lost? What's his
Daniel
name?
Gates, I think. And that's one of those worst things, too, about football is new season, you're a team captain, week 2, fractured leg. I mean, the injury report was so fast. It's never that fast. It's always lower leg injury, questionable. It was so obvious that the team reported a fracture, which I don't think I've even ever seen. And Sterling Shepard, through 2 games, 7 catches and 9 catches respectively, he seems to be Daniel Jones' primary target, and this is the team that gave Kenny Golladay big money. Darius Slayton gets behind the secondary there for a touchdown and almost had 2 off of his hands. But through 2 weeks, I don't know how you keep Sterling Shepard out of the lineup. And you expect Saquon Barkley to get back to 80% of what Saquon Barkley is used to being. I do think it'll still take a couple weeks here, and I did have someone in our league here reach out to me for a trade, and I mentioned Barkley, and he goes, "You're like the 10th person asking about Barkley." So people are trying to trade low for Barkley. That's a theme because running backs with that kind of share and volume are so hard to get your hands on.
We got some quick hitters on the way, but I do want to do these 7 tweets. You always like to do this, where you compile 7 tweets from really notable NFL or fantasy guys and run through them. These can be funny, these can be serious, these can be tweets you pay attention to, but there's certain guys and gals that you have to follow on Twitter during the season, especially during fantasy season. Evan, what are the 7 big tweets that you've got this week?
It's my empty canvas, and I look forward to doing this, and I think that there may be sponsorship opportunities down the way. So if Taco Bell or Buffalo Wild Wings wanted to jump on that and are listening, as I'm sure they are. This one from Nathan Jonke. Rob Gronkowski, Darren Waller, and Travis Kelsey all scored 25-plus points in PPR, cut each of their fantasy production in half, and they would still be top 5 tight ends for the week, which is hard to wrap your mind around, and it also goes back to the point where you're drafting the 1, 2, or 3 tight end, and then you're waiting to the last
And Waller
round.
had, what, 3 balls go through his hands?
Derek Carr threw so many passes behind him. Darren Waller might have a game where he has 30 targets. Seriously. Like, it is unheard. It is explicit to watch how quickly Derek Carr locks on the Darren Waller.
Here's my thing. Ruggs is like peanut brittle. He's going to break.
That was a bad pick. 12th overall. That was a really bad pick.
Who else is he?
Brian Edwards. Hunter Renfrow.
I love me some red zone Renfrow, but he's a route guy. He's not going to be the guy that goes get you 100-plus yards a game. He's going to be the 5 catches,
I think you need to watch
46
more
yards.
Renfro's off. Listen, at the end of that game, they stuck Marlon Humphrey on Hunter Renfrow.
I love Hunter Renfrow.
There was a play in that game,
red zone Renfrow,
from Monday night that made me hurt inside. It wasn't noticed in the moment, but there was a play where the ball bounced off of Darren Waller's thigh, and Marlon Humphrey had it in his hands for an interception, and he didn't know it was an interception. You know who knew it was an interception? Hunter Renfrow did. The only guy in the freaking stadium who knew and knocked it out of his hands. If Humphrey just takes off, he'd have scored easily, but that's how it goes sometimes. J.J. Zacharyson, Joe Judge is going to make the entire team run home to Jersey. That's just funny.
He's intense, man.
Okay, so this is Barstool Carl, who famously had the Cody Parkey rant after the double doink. I wouldn't watch it around kids, but for your own enjoyment, it is funny. He's quote tweeting Adam Hoge. Matt Nagy says Justin Fields provides a lot of value as a chess piece in the Bears' game plan. Barstool Carl, instead of chess piece, why not use him as quarterback? I like that. Keenan Allen targets in 12 non-injury shortened games with Justin Herbert. 19, 19, 13, 13, 12, 11, 11, 11, 11, 10, 10, 7.
I have Keenan Allen.
Justin Herbert is a smart kid. Throw the ball to Keenan Allen.
Keenan, baby.
You don't
Let's go.
You see
give it to him, baby.
Brian Baldinger breaking down a Falcons red zone play. Arthur Smith doesn't even have Kyle Pitts on the field. What are these coaches doing? Are you trying to outsmart yourself and prove you can score without the highest tight end drafted in NFL history? Put the 6'8 mutant on the field and throw the ball up to him. Ian Hartitz. I have a lot of Ian Hartitz stuff. I like this guy. Maybe we can get him on sometimes. Marquise Hollywood Brown has caught a touchdown and or surpassed 80 receiving yards in 9 consecutive games. Okay, that's impressive. And I think a storyline that people aren't really circling, but it's notable. Mike Clay, NFL. Everyone knows Mike Clay. I understand working in J.D. McKissick in these situations, but I don't understand Antonio Gibson, a converted wide receiver, being a complete zero in these situations. Literally no role for one of your best playmakers when it's all on the line. Goes back to my Arthur Smith point. Let's have our best players on the field. And Mina Kimes, America darling Mina Kimes. Remember when Daniel Jones recorded the fastest speed in the NFL last year, and then we, as a society, collectively erased it from our memory?
He's quick, man. He's quick. Well, that's going to do it for your 7 tweets. Evan loves doing these every week, and that was genuine from Carl. I have not heard that to this point. That guy is funny, not just on Twitter, but just to listen to. He's got that thick Chicago accent. All right, coming up, let's get into some quick hitters. What are some struggles that we're noticing out of Green Bay? We'll get into that and other stuff coming up. Fantasy Football Sunday. Keep it right here.
Hey, this is Sigmund Bloom with FootballGuys.com, and you're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday.
It's that time of the year again, and all eyes are now turning to football as teams are back on the gridiron to start the football season. As always, BetOnline is your #1 spot for all of the pro and college football action this season. Get all of the updated odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest, the world's largest 200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline. Here's what you have to do. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Green Bay struggled mightily in week #1. I was watching that game against the New Orleans Saints. Jameis looked really good. Give him credit. Give Sean Payton getting his guys ready to go. Aaron Rodgers and company, they didn't look like what they wanted to be there. They get the Lions. They get them on Monday Night Football. Evan, what's the sense that we're expecting from one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL?
You expect to bounce back. There's no question about that, especially against the team who You've really just dominated over the last decade plus. Lions are frisky. They do like to play for Dan Campbell.
Yeah, how many were they down by?
41-10.
And I almost came back. They were within 8 points of the 49ers as that game concluded on an onside kick that they just missed.
And that's not quitting. And I do think there is something to that. As much as the media likes to make fun of Dan Campbell, I kind of like the guy. I'm on his side. To me,
he's an Aggie, man. You can't like him.
It was a long time ago. To me, it's less about a bounce back from Rodgers, which you expect, and more the question of, does all the rain cloud following you in the offseason with the draft stuff, we're on the draft day, it comes out he wants to be traded, and the holdouts, is that too much of a roadblock that you just really can't get past? Like, can you just put it all together at once? Now, you have done that for 8 to 10 years, playing in 2 of the 3 last NFC Championships game. Is that something they're kind of going to be lingering over their head all year? To me, it's interesting to see. And does it get to a point where he just stops playing? I don't think anything's off the table here. This is my best guess.
You think there's a point this season where Aaron Rodgers just starts sitting on the bench and they insert Jordan Love?
Let's say he has an injury that's minor. And in his mind, he's like, I can play this up and make this relevant enough for me to be healthy enough, not risk further injuring it and getting to my Denver Broncos next year. I don't think it's likely. And there were, you heard things that like, okay, every time he goes to the East Coast or Florida, he never really plays well there. So that's probably what we can chalk this up to. I also don't think they expect the Jameis Winston to throw for 5 touchdowns against a defense that's, usually pretty good. I think it's a one-off, but it's something to monitor for sure, especially with all the drama coming into the year. How they handle this adversity, in my opinion, is going to be fun and notable to watch.
He did shave. He did get a haircut.
He has an Alice in Chains vibe to him. Like mid-90s, Blind Melon, Shannon Hoon, sitting on a blanket, selling peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out of his backpack.
Okay.
I don't know where he was going with that.
So that's overdoing it in the Packers camp up there in Green Bay. The other side, if you want to go massive overreactions, would be Jacksonville with Urban Meyer getting a lot of criticism after game 1. Trevor Lawrence threw a couple picks. Is this fair? Is this foul? Like, how much are you reading into this smoke coming out of Jacksonville?
It's easy to pile on the Jacksonville historically. This, to me, feels as bad as it can feel. They don't have a way to protect Trevor Lawrence. You had a running back last year that was the surprise breakout player of the year in James Robinson, won a lot of people leagues and was the best ad when it came to your waiver wires. And he uses his old Ohio State player Carlos Hyde, who's not just over the hill but working on the next hill. You come out and lose to a team projected to be worse than you, though 3 interceptions. It was never particularly close, especially in the second half. And you talk about a guy who, at the first sign, not the first sign of adversity, but when losing starts piling up, he gets migraines and has to leave. Like, I just don't see a situation here. They're only going to be able to get better through the draft. They are not going out and signing Khalil Mack. It's not a team who operates, and spends a lot of money in free agency. They're going to have to do this through the draft, and it's going to take, 2 or 3 drafts minimum to get them competitive. And at every single loss that builds up and every single interception, the allure of Trevor Lawrence starts to take a hit. And with as fickle as he is, as a human being, as you've seen over the last 15, 20 years, I think Jacksonville has a chance here to be, other than maybe the Pittsburgh Pirates, like the worst team in American professional sports. And not just for this year, but for the next half a decade.
Something to think about. All right, let's get into some quick matchups this morning. You're welcome to give us your take on that. You can always reach out to us via the Fantasy Football mailbag. Bears, Bengals. Andy Dalton taking on Joe Burrow. The battle of 2 guys that pretty good successful college career. Joe, I think, has a little more than Andy in this situation. But the 2 Bs, what are we thinking about this matchup? Who do you like? Who do you not like?
Let's start with the 1-0 Cincinnati Bengals. This is a great second data point to evaluate what they're doing. Last year, Tyler Boyd, startable, especially in PPR formats. T. Higgins had a breakout year as a rookie. That was easy. Now you throw in the top 5 pick of Jamar Chase, who, despite the drops and the college ball was easier to catch, has
Andy
a great
Dalton
week
revenge
last
game?
week.
Andy Dalton revenge game or no?
I don't think Andy Dalton's cool enough for revenge to be anywhere close. He's not. The word revenge is not in the discussion of Andy Dalton than anything in life. Who am I starting with Cincinnati? I'd start T. Higgins. To me, I think that he's proved he should be out there for your team. And if there's a second one, it's definitely Jamar Chase in regards to receivers. Tyler Boyd didn't do much last week. We need to get a good sample size under our belt to see how this goes. I cannot get past the fact that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, what they did in college, the telepathic relationship they have. I just can't get past that. And on the field, it certainly looks like that's what going to be one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets. Good Joe Mixon. That's what you want from Joe Mixon. It's been a late first, second round pick on Joe Mixon. 30 carries, a touchdown. This is why there's hype around Joe Mixon. Now you just hope you can get it for more than a week, and you hope he holds up. And the injury history has always been the problem. It's never really been production. And Joe Burrow is right there as a fringe QB1. I think he's at like 12 ranked on the week. So if you have a better option, if you have a Kyler Murray, you don't need to listen to this. But if you're between guys, he's right there on the fringe of being a second quarterback. As far as the Bears go, David Montgomery looked like a bell cow on Sunday night. He was really the only bright spot of their offense, other than Allen Robinson running 6-yard hitches. I would start David Montgomery everywhere I have him, and I'd start Allen Robinson, and that's it. I don't want any other pieces.
Hey, Rob. All right, I got it.
And I'm watching, and this is another. Let's watch Justin. We're on Justin Fields' watch, and everyone's sort of sitting there waiting. The first band has now you're waiting for the headliner, and now the lights start to dim. We're all on Justin Fields' watch.
All right, next one. Rams, Colts. Got a little Matt Stafford, little Carson Wentz. What do we think about this one?
NFC West, best division in football. All teams 4-0. Could we have, I think, one of the first times ever, all 4 teams make the playoffs? Something to keep an eye on. Matt Stafford, perfect passer rating. How many times did Collinsworth tell us that him and Cooper Kupp have breakfast and coffee in the morning?
A lot.
Matt Stafford's a really good start this week. Cooper Kupp's a good start this week. The question with Robert Woods is this the norm? Is he now a part of a platoon? Or was last week an aberration and you can expect a nice target share and production every week? Like I said, we're in week 2. We need to watch these things to see how they shake out. Darrell Henderson was the running back the entire game except for one play. At the very end, they brought in Sony Michel to wind down the clock. Darrell Henderson, I heard someone say today, if you redrafted today, we're taking 2 rounds higher. I think there was questions. Is it Xavier Jones maybe? You bring in Sony Michel, Jake Funk. No, it's Darrell Henderson. We should have seen that, and that shouldn't have been that hard to project. Tyler Higbee looked great. No Gerald Everett. He's not splitting time this year. He is a big part of what they do. And amongst the sort of fringe tight end ones, at least through 1 week, he looks to be a great start. The Colts side, it's not a lot. You start Jonathan Taylor, and I think Nyheim Hines is startable.
I think I picked up Pascal and dropped. I can't remember who I dropped.
It was Pascal last week, and it could be Michael Pittman this week. The Seahawks defensive line did a really good job against the Colts, and because of that, Carson Wentz through, I think Jonathan Taylor had 20% of the targets, and I believe Nyheim Hines had 23%, something as well. Nyheim Hines had 9 targets. I think you can get away with really starting either of those guys. And who are they playing? They're playing Aaron Donald. Who's going to be in Carson Wentz's face all day? It's going to be Aaron Donald. That seems checked down to me. Those two, Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor, at least so far, feel like the only pieces I want in this offense. If Pascal comes out and does it again, he's going to force your hand. But that's where I would stay right there with the Indianapolis Colts.
All right, last matchup we're going to look at before we get to Bob Harris of Sirius XM. San Francisco 49ers taking on Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles, which Jalen looked fantastic this past week. Devontae Smith, the chemistry there. What's he going to look like taking on the 49ers?
Makes you wonder, Jalen Hurts, that second-year breakout. Are we going to see it? Is it going to happen? What Lamar Jackson did? Patrick Mahomes in his second year because he didn't start his first year. It looks like the stage is set for him, at least, if you will. Now, week 1 against an Atlanta team that doesn't you don't project to really be good at all in anything. I'm going back to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is my quarterback 1 in my 2 quarterback leagues. He'll be starting for me every week. I'm not saying he's matchup proof, but you're probably not going to have a better option. Miles Sanders looked good. We're starting Miles Sanders. Kenneth Gainwell's a guy that should be owned. He got, I think, 9 carries, something like that. Something to keep an eye on, and especially if Miles Sanders would have missed time, it looks like the rookie Kenneth Gainwell would have good value. If you're going to go with an Eagles wide receiver, it's got to be Devontae Smith. Even back to the 2018 Alabama Crimson Tide, Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, not the connection you necessarily think of, but it was there. And I don't really want to part of Quez Watkins. And Jalen Reagor did have the touchdown. It was closer to garbage time. If you're going to fire up an Eagles wide receiver, it's Devontae Smith to me. If Zach Ertz can't play with the hamstring, Dallas Goddard seems like a pretty good play. Especially with Jalen, goal line situations, I think Hurts and Goddard are going to start to develop a pretty good relationship.
I really like Dallas Goddard. I picked him early, and I got a lot of criticism for that, but he did have a touchdown.
He scored.
Week 1.
He
Hoping
scored.
he keeps that up.
And listen, for tight ends in that part of the rankings, you just need the one. You can go 2 catches, 10 yards, 1 touchdown. That's going to be enough for you.
All right, let's flip over to San Fran, Ev.
Elijah Mitchell mania. You start Elijah Mitchell. I'm not starting Trey Sermon. I'm waiting to see with Trey Sermon.
Healthy scratch
after week 1. We'll see what develops there. Real drama in San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk. He's taking like 4th team reps now. You don't want any part of Ayuk. Deebo Samuel, Elijah Mitchell, George Kittle, and no on Jimmy Garoppolo. Easy.
No on Guab? No, you don't like it?
I think if you're starting Jimmy Garoppolo, you probably have an injury elsewhere, or you forgot to draft a quarterback.
That's fair. All right, coming up, we're going to welcome in Bob Harris. You hear him on SiriusXM. He's also the FootballDiehards.com senior editor. Bob joins us next.
Hey, this is Jason Fitz from ESPN, and you're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday.
It's a great time to find your perfect vacation home here in the Ozarks. Whether it's living and fishing on one of our beautiful lakes or canoeing and kayaking on the Buffalo or White Rivers, Carolyn and Travis Arnold of the Arnold team would love to help you find it. Call or text 870-715-2404. And these experienced agents with Weichert Realtors in Harrison will help you find your dream place here in God's country.
You're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday, presented by the Arnold team with Weichert Realtors in Harrison and a member of the League of Fort Smith.
Continuing on Season 2, Episode 3 of Fantasy Football Sunday. I'd like to go to the phone lines, welcome in Bob Harris, Football Diehards senior editor, as well as SiriusXM fantasy host. Bob, appreciate it. Let's start with what we saw on Thursday Night Football. Now, I really liked, and Evan really liked what we saw from a couple guys, but quarterback-wise, Taylor Heineke for the Washington football team. Is there fantasy value there the rest of the season, or is that just a misnomer for what we could expect the rest of the year from him?
We don't have a huge sample size, right? But I think aside from our love for Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't know if it's a well-founded love because he's kind of been up and down over the course of his career. All we've seen from Heineke is, for the most part, good. They had the bad interception against the Giants, but came back and got the job done. Teammates seem to be in tune with him. Kerry Mclaurin, in particular, the player fantasy manager you're most interested in, seems to have his attention, and that works. We'll see if Logan Thomas's totals, work out, and we'll see how the passing game plays out in the backfield with J.D. McKissic taking a greater role than we expected or maybe hoped for. Everyone heavily invested in Antonio Gibson. So I do think he can be a guy. Look, they gave him some money this offseason. I think the playoff win, or the playoff loss, I say win, but it was kind of a win for him personally, just showing up against a tough Buccaneers defense in the playoffs. I think there's a lot to like here, not the least of which is his willingness to put the ball out there and let his skill players get the job done.
Bob, other quarterback, Daniel Jones, had another great long run. It was called back due to a penalty. This is a guy that both Evan and I really liked watching Thursday night. Is he a guy that you're willing to put, say, over a Ben Roethlisberger or a Matt Ryan when it comes to a certain matchup situation?
I'll watch the matchups. I want to see a little more. I think the thing that's overlooked about Daniel Jones, and the last night it was on full display, is his running ability. As long as you don't ask him to go past the threshold where he trips and falls down, he's really good, right? And I think last year he led the team in rushing like 6 different times. That's granted without Saquon Barkley in the mix. But still, he's capable of that, and that gives you some upside from a fantasy perspective, certainly upside that Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan don't give you that rushing upside. So, look, I think I'm not going to be forcing my hand a little bit. I've been if not the engineer, then certainly the conductor of the Daniel Jones hype train in the past. So I don't want to get too far in front of it, but I'm encouraged.
We got a question here, Bob, from Ray and Harrison. He's got Jameis Winston and he's got Josh Allen at quarterback. After Jameis's performance, who should he go with this weekend, Bob?
I'm probably still going with Allen. I know it didn't look encouraging. He has a really strong history against the Dolphins, has had some huge performances. I know that's not, determinative of future efforts, but Winston's touchdown seemed a little fluky to me. I think nobody's thrown that many touchdowns with less passing yardage than Winston did in this game. So I'm going to still play them as I drafted them, and that means Josh Allen's going to go ahead of them. We like to outsmart ourselves as fantasy managers, and I'm okay with that. And if this questioner has, a hunch, I always recommend play your hunches over mine. My hunch is based, though, on a little bit, I try not to base it on the narrow band, right, you guys?
Yeah.
We can get caught up in the moment. We tend to do that as fantasy managers. I like to take a step back and give it some serious consideration. We just don't have that much history to work with Jameis Winston, at least in this offense. So I'm going to go with the guy with the better weapons and the guy with more upside and a strong history against the Dolphins and Josh Allen.
Bob, the other question that Ray had, DJ Chark or Marquez Callaway? I guess that kind of depends on what Jameis does for Marquez, but is there a good comparison? Is there someone that you're selecting with out of those two gentlemen?
So I'd be fine with either. If he ends up starting, Jameis, certainly Callaway is a great play. I think Callaway was, again, there wasn't a ton of yardage, right? So shy of, being a big part of the touchdown picture, it wasn't going to be a big game for any of those receivers. Juwan Johnson came up big, but yeah. So I'm probably leaning the other way. I'm probably going to stay away from Callaway just until I get a feel. I guess I'm still a little skeptical about what this offense really is with Jameis at the helm, and I'll take a wait and see approach on that.
Elijah Mitchell was the flavor of the week. And it was certainly an interesting. It was a high conversation as far as fab money goes. How much do you put down? I listened to you and Sigmund hash it out on the couch, and I know you guys sort of had different perspectives. No one wrong yet, no one really right yet either, and it might just end up in a gray area. Tell our audience because I heard it, but tell our audience sort of your tempered expectations on Elijah Mitchell and why.
So I think my expectations are unchanged for this backfield in general. I don't think it's going to be any one guy for an extended period unless they really come on. Look, and so that's the range of possible outcomes includes Elijah Mitchell being every bit as good as we saw against Detroit. Detroit's not a great defense. It's not, a daunting a matchup or a totally daunting matchup, but it's a little tougher matchup this week. So we'll see. But the thing we know about Kyle Shanahan is he's more than willing to plug and play whichever player seems to be at on his mind at the moment. I can think of times last year when I was watching 49ers games and I see Raheem Mostert playing. I'd glance up and I'd see Raheem Mostert. I go, wait, that's Jeffrey Wilson. They look exactly the same because they're doing the same exact thing. And Elijah Mitchell is doing those same exact things. This is more about the scheme, and I think whoever's in there is going to get the opportunities. If we're going to that, I'm looking at the investment they've made in Trey Sermon. And I think at some point we'll see him. And in fact, I think we'll see him this week. We heard the offensive coordinator say on Friday, Mike McDaniel say that, he will be active, that he's been really aggressive in practice. And I look at the 49ers in general, Kyle Shanahan not above sending messages to his players.
No.
And in this case, maybe the message has been sent to both Trey Sermon and Brandon Ayuk. You guys got to pick up the pace a little bit. And it sounds like, based on what the offensive coordinator said Friday, that at least for one of them, Sermon, the message has gotten through in practice this week. So, I'm in leagues where I saw the whole range, right? Like I was spending maybe a quarter of my fab budget, probably knowing I wasn't going to get Mitchell. I saw other people spend as much as close to 95%, to land him. I saw a lot of people spending 75%. I just don't. If I'm spending that level of fab money, I want more clarity. And I say that acknowledging that, some of this is on the players. If Elijah Mitchell goes out there and continues to do the things he did against Detroit, I'm going to look silly. I don't expect that to be the outcome, though.
I think people James Robinson is so fresh in their mind, and they talk themselves into, and what would I wait if I could potentially get a season-changing player like this with the outlook? Of course, those are totally two different situations, and they don't have to be linear at all. And I also don't necessarily buy. You hear, well, Elijah Mitchell outplayed Trey Sermon in practice. Okay, well, everything we read after the season was Trey Sermon was the number 2. So is this just people sort of not wanting to sound wrong and saying like, oh yeah, there's a reason for this, or is Shanahan sort of taking a principle of a school approach? Because you read about Brandon Ayuk, he's running drills by himself, and I saw something. I don't think it's verified. Maybe there was a late curfew thing, anything like that. But I think a lot of it depends on they trade up in the 3rd round to get Trey Sermon. Is a 6th rounder really going to come out and be Mr. Everything. I'm in your camp where I'm a little bit more hesitant to just, like, in our league, $200 fab, he went for like 161. And I'm a little bit hesitant.
And I think that to me is not unusual, and it's also more than I'm interested in paying. But I mean, if you listen to my Sean series, my co-host there, Mike Dempsey, is all in on, spending. He's not afraid to spend. He's a big believer in being aggressive early because you don't know when that player is going to come along. And James Robinson would be a great example. I just think the circumstances are different here. And again, we talk about these things as if we are speaking with certainty. None of us know. These are all end up things being the player. What we're hanging our hat on here is the history of Kyle Shanahan. And by the way, was it not like a week ago Kyle Shanahan was saying no one guy is going to get the bulk of the workload here? I mean, that might have been the truest thing or the only true thing I've ever heard Kyle Shanahan say about his backfield, right? I expect it to be mixed up a little bit. And maybe this was another Elijah Mitchell week, but if Trey Sermon's in the mix, the ball in his hands is going to determine a lot. I look at the Buccaneers backfield, you guys, and I know what Bruce Arians wants. He wants Ronald Jones to be the primary guy. He says it all the time. He mostly acts like it, although Leonard Fournette started last week and, got a fair amount, pretty much the entire first series. But part of that, for Ronald Jones is, there's the opportunity. He's got to deliver on it. And at times he does, and at times this past week he didn't. So, that's a big part of this equation. Players have to come through. And there are things we don't know about behind the scenes. You mentioned some of the stuff that I look. Also, for running backs, a complicating issue is always going to be special teams play.
Right.
If you're not a special teams contributor, sometimes that will dictate, where you're at on the active roster on game day. And maybe that had something to do with Trey Sermon, who I don't believe plays on special teams.
And, you feel like Kyle Shanahan, like Bill Belichick, maybe just hates fantasy football, and we'll look up in 4 weeks and it'll be
also
JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson Jr. So who knows? We'll see. Is Bob Harris, if Bob Harris could own one, is he owning Tyson Williams or is he owning Latavius Murray?
I would take either of them, but if I had a choice, it's Tyson Williams. Looks like he has a little more juice. I wasn't a fan of the way the usage ended up playing out. I would like to see more of Williams
down
in the
stretch.
second half of that game. But, if I had either of them, like if I was, playing, I don't think Tyson Williams is J.K. Dobbins, right? But if he's playing the lead role, I think people who drafted Gus Edwards, assuming J.K. Dobbins was going to be in there or would be playing, were still playing Gus Edwards on occasions. I think Latavius Murray moves right up to that level. And maybe that's what both of these guys are. Maybe they're both just Gus Edwards level plays, which means a viable flex any given week. And most likely, based on what you had to give up to get them in forms of draft resources or free agent resources, maybe more if you had to do it in free agency, right, for Tyson Williams anyway, then you could afford to play him like that. Play him as flex plays. And flex plays that might be in an opportunity to give you more production than you would have expected from that position.
I don't know how many Ravens you're going to want with the news that Ronnie Stanley will be out for a while and Tyree Phillips got hurt and carted off the field. Now it's Andre Villanueva at left tackle. And I'm unfortunately a Ravens fan. It looks like a situation that may get worse quickly before it gets better.
Yeah, they got to work on that edge protection a little bit, or Lamar Jackson has to at least keep that head a little more on a swivel.
So we are live on Sunday mornings to pretty much the entire state of Arkansas, and I know that there's thousands of people playing fantasy football, and there's not everyone the different players are spread across so many leagues. I'm going to ask you rank these players. These are sort of fringe flex wide receivers, running backs, and I know we're not going to hold your feet to the fire here because these are tough calls, but we want Bob Harris's 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to these trios of players.
Go.
Let's start with Jarvis Landry, Corey Davis, or Marvin Jones Jr.
I would probably go Landry, Jones Jr., and Davis this week. I love Corey Davis. I wish I could project him higher. This is not so much about him as it is against Zach Wilson going against Bill Belichick, who guys might not have heard this, has a really good track record against rookie quarterbacks going back to like the year 2000.
Indeed, he does.
And I think over the last, 8-9 years, rookie quarterbacks have only thrown 6 touchdowns. One loss to rookie quarterbacks at Tua last year, but in general, he has a game plan, and a big part of that game plan is taking away the biggest part of that quarterback's success or whatever success he's had. And in this case, that'll be Corey Davis. So he's the bottom of the totem pole for me. Landry at the top, just because the absence of Odell Beckham again kind of thrust him maybe into a position to get some additional targets. And I can play Marvin Jones Jr. any damn week. I like him a lot.
And this one's a little bit personal because I'm asking for a friend, and that friend is me, who lost his running back to Travis Etienne before the season started, and I'm trying to get it hashed out and fixed. James White, Nyheim Hines, or Jamal Williams?
I think you play Jamal Williams first. First of all, there's a little bit of an injury issue with him. He turned up as...
Does that concern you? His chest, I saw that. Does that concern Bob Harris?
I mean, I don't know. Anything about a Monday night where there might be an injury where somebody could get something aggravated or whatever, there's a little bit of concern if I don't have a fallback. But let's just pretend, all things being equal, he's fine. And I don't know that. But he would be the first of those three. I think Nyheim Hines is a viable flex play every damn week. He catches a lot of footballs. Sometimes turns them into touchdowns. I like James White just fine. Maybe that role will continue to be solid. He does seem to keep delivering. I think all three are playable, but I do them in that order. Williams, Hines, and White.
Bob Harris with us here on Fantasy Football Sunday, Football Diehards, senior editor, Sirius XM fantasy host. Bob, when you look at some guys this season, and we overreact in college football, the NFL, to week one. What is not an overreaction based on what you saw from the first week of NFL football?
Boy. That in Tampa Bay, every single down is a passing down. This team is going to be a track race. I don't even know why they hand the ball off, honestly. It's just, they have all the weaponry they need to go downfield. I think they have a running back who can contribute in that. And by that, I said backs. I meant back. And Gio Bernard, and we'll eventually see him, I think, take on a bigger role in the receiving game. But the Tampa Bay is going to be very good on offense is probably not an overreaction. I mean, Chiefs think Travis Kelsey continues. I'll just expand that. Two guys at the position that I was drafting in the first two rounds of fantasy drafts was Travis Kelsey and Darren Waller. To say that those guys give you more leverage over the field than anybody else at their respective positions is not an overreaction. That's going to continue. In Waller's case, it's just the target load, and in Kelsey's case, it's just the production he gets with his target. So both those guys being exactly what we drafted them to be is not an overreaction.
Bob, we've decided on our fantasy football punishment. We were trying to find something out of the ordinary, but we're just going to go with the Waffle House challenge. That's what
people love that.
I know. So I'm really excited about the potential. Now, I started out strong, 1-0 this past week, most points in my league. I'm hoping for a good week. Had Dustin Hopkins on Thursday night, who had a solid performance for me. What's the key to me the rest of the season? There's a bunch of them. What would you say is a Bob Harris memento for me not to end up in Waffle House having to fork down 24 hours of some of the greasiest food known to man?
Solid quarterback play, right? Just have a solid quarterback, a high floor quarterback, maybe a mobile quarterback. That should get you enough points to at least keep you in every game. I think, we always devalue the quarterback in fantasy football because of the numbers of them. I think we should look at it slightly differently. There's a handful of them to give you that super high floor every week. That keeps you, and I'm translating this from like guillotine league plays where the low scorer loses every week, right?
Yeah.
How do you stay in the guillotine league? You have a good quarterback.
Well, I'd say that's pretty steady advice. All right, so Bob, when you look at your teams, and I know we've talked to Jake Seeley of The Athletic, we've talked to why am I blanking? Erickson last week. Bob, it's wild the number of teams that they have week by week. I got one because I got 1,000 other things on my plate outside of just fantasy football stuff with sports. What number are you at with your number of fantasy teams?
I finally was able to count them this week as I set my lineup. And so a league price set lineups that looks like, 29. 29 is what it is.
That's insane, isn't it?
Well, and
29.
Erickson said he just had this giant spreadsheet because it was like, how do you manage all those? Like, I go to bed on Tuesday night, and it's like not a burden, but you got to set. Do you just do that all in mass? Like, how do you manage all that?
So I go through. I have a list of platforms with teams that what teams are there. The problem for me is because I'm not as slick as Erickson, and I don't keep all my players and everything in a spreadsheet. I do use my fantasy GM on footballdiehards.com. It kind of helps you if you have a player come up as a late scratch. That's the hard part for me. Doing the lineups, I do them every Tuesday. It takes me about 2 hours. Go through, try and make notes of what kind of free agent moves I need to make, and try put the waiver wire claims in when I do the lineup. And then I try to revisit the lineup again Wednesday and Thursday. And I just do it by platform. I have X number on my fantasy league, X number on CBS, X number on Yahoo, X number on Real Time Sports, Real number on Fantrax. And I just go through and hit them all those sites at one time. And, all your leagues are listed there. And so I just kind of handle it that way. And I handle it poorly. Let's just stipulate that right from the onset.
No, you don't.
It's a lot of teams.
Bob, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We kind of want to end on an unorthodox question here, because I know for people like you and Sigmund Bloom and Jeff Erickson and all the fantasy analysts alike, Sunday is a work day for you, quite literally. And it's a work day in which you're watching probably multiple TVs at your house, probably not at a sports bar because you need sound. I'm curious because mine just looks like a bunch of takeout food and still wearing pajamas and smelling bad. What do your NFL Sundays look like? Do you work in a walk? At the end of those 3:30 games, you wake up, get the workout in, eat the breakfast, read the paper. What's your routine?
Up really early because I do the pregame show on Sirius. So that's from 11 to 1, right? So I get up really early so I can do my workout, take a shower. I make my smoothies and do all those things that I do to get all energized and start chugging coffee, get through that show. Then I'm done. Basically, with the hard part of my week is done when kickoff happens. I sit down with a big bowl of popcorn and a bunch of screens in front of me and consume as much football as I possibly can, taking notes, starting the beginning of my writing, which really begins in earnest on Monday. I have a lot of words to gin together as the week starts. So I start laying the groundwork for that. But mostly I kind of watch TV and I sit down. This is the interesting fact about Bob Harris. I do not sit down when I work, ever. I'm standing up as we speak. I stand up while I do radio shows. I stand up while I write. I do not sit down until Sunday. I sit down. And sometimes that ends up leading to a potential nap situation. So
nothing wrong with that.
It happens. Brief moment.
Bob's watching certain games and he wakes up and it's already in the second slate of games that he's
I picture him taking a nap standing up like a giraffe in his eyes closed when he's
That's wild. Well, Bob, we really appreciate your time. You've given us some of yours, so I'm going to allow you to just kind of tell our audience you're across 5 ESPN Arkansas radio stations. You're on 15 plus podcast platforms. This podcast gets a lot of listens. Tell our audience how they can read you and how they can listen to you as well.
Well, they can catch most everything by following me on Twitter at Football Diehard. I put out whatever's going on. You can catch my written work and my video content at Football Diehards. I do a YouTube chat every Saturday to ask me anything for about an hour where I answer as many lineup questions as I can. You can also catch me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio about 5 days a week. Check your local listings. It's hard to miss me. You turn it on, and there you go. And also, Saturday nights we're on that's Fantasy Sports Radio on NFL Radio on Saturday nights as well for about 3 hours. So hard to miss me. Look for Football Diehards on your Sirius XM app.
Bob, we appreciate you. We appreciate you giving our audience some of your calculated insight. Best of luck this Sunday, and we'll hopefully do it again next year as well.
You know where I'll be. Thanks, guys.
Hey, this is Field Yates with ESPN, and you're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday.
Travis and Carolyn Arnold of the Arnold team with Weichert Realtors in Harrison are your go-to real estate agents in the North Central Arkansas area. From Eureka Springs to Mountain Home, from the Missouri line down to Jasper and the Buffalo River area, these hardworking agents are ready to help you find the perfect property. Call or text them at 870-715-2404 and let Travis and Carolyn go work for you.
You're listening to Fantasy Football Sunday, presented by the Arnold team with Weichert Realtors in Harrison and a member of the League of Fort Smith.
Last segment of Season 2, Episode 3 of Fantasy Football Sunday. We like to do a couple things in this final segment. Mailbag, flex pick, and Survivor picks. We'll start with the mailbag. Who's it from today, Evan? Who we got?
We have our good friend Chester from Cedarville, and he goes, we saw what Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey do on Sunday and essentially every Sunday. Who is the best NFL trio of all time, offense or defense?
Best NFL trio of all time, both offense or defense.
I immediately went, because people always Bronco Nagurski and George Blanda in the 30s were mucking it up. I think Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, and Troy Aikman is tough to beat.
It's hard to beat that, because even if you go Pats, who do you say? Do you say Tom Brady and...
I don't think the running back was formidable enough. You could go Edgerrin James, Harrison, and Manning.
That's a good one. That's more of a new age one that people like. But the thing is, you can't with the Pats because, I love me some Deion Branch, but I don't think he's at the same level as some guys. No. Randy Moss was there for, 2 seasons or 1?
2 at least.
2?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so,
but they didn't win a championship with him. And not that he was the problem, but we know what happened against the New York Giants that year as they came up just short.
I don't know if you value it as successfully winning or if you value it as just unstoppable, because I tell you what, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Ben Roethlisberger they didn't win a Super Bowl with necessarily those 3, but they gave teams nightmares.
Okay, would you go Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelsey?
Look, it's been 3 years. I don't know how there's anything as good as that. Do you could be up 30-0 and you're going to lose.
Yeah. Ask the Houston Texans.
It's coming for you.
Ask the Houston Texans.
It's just a matter of time.
Good question, Chester. We really appreciate those. You can continue. And you can text them in throughout the week at 877-377-6963. I'll pick them up from the text line and toss them in our rundown. Now, Survivor pick. This is something that is new to me. This is only my 2nd season of doing Survivor. Do you do college football Survivor like Big 12, or do you just do NFL?
I did once. Forgot to set my week 4 and
for college.
Yeah, for college, and then I owed like $80 for. So no, I don't do those. And look, 80. I know that they're fun. I don't. It's too hard for me to keep up with all that stuff. I'm a simple guy. 2 or 3 leagues, and then let's just keep it at that.
I'm a 1 league man. I'm picking the Cleveland Browns to beat the
Houston Texans. It's about as safe as it gets. And I'm seeing Chubb.
It's 12.5. That's the line. That's a big NFL line.
Denver Jacksonville's a good one too, but it's far and away the best one. Now you won't be able to use the Browns again, and the Browns are a good NFL team.
Yes, that is true.
But the name of the game, quite literally, is Survivor. So just survive, move on, and then worry about that next week.
And some people try and kind of ease into it the first couple weeks where they're like, I think
the contrarians.
It's like I want to save and they lose, and I'm scared to do that, so I'm just going with the best line each week.
You always ask yourself, how would you rather go out by picking a really big favorite and then losing to bad luck, or messing around and picking the Bengals and trying to get cute, and you take the first one. Yeah. No question about that.
All right, so that's my Survivor pick. If you have a Survivor pick, best of luck to you. We're in week 2 of that. Now, Evan started up something this last week, and we'll close down shop here on this. You have a list. Is it from Fantasy Pros, or what's that list from the top 100?
Yeah, it's Fantasy Pros.
So Fantasy Pros,
weeks a week.
Great website. And Evan thought of this, what I thought was a great game. We each have to pick a player outside the top 100, and whoever has the most points wins. Now, there's a little bit of caveat to last week, but I'll give Evan credit. He took it on the chin. He knows he's about to have to sing Big Girls Don't Cry from Fergie. But before we get into that entertaining part, which is going to be a promo running on every station we have, kind of explain to our audience again what this game entails.
When you look at any flex rankings, after 100, they're dart throws. And Sigmund Bloom calls them what the heck flexes because they're quite literally what the heck. We decided we would take a list, and you can pick a guy after number 100. The person with the player that scores fewer points that week has to sing a verse, a stanza, whatever you will, of a song
or
at the winner's choosing. And the controversy last week was, and this is a little bit on me, I gave the list. Tyson Williams was after 100, but Gus Edwards officially hadn't been knocked out yet. Now, if I was stubborn, I would say you could have picked Tyson Williams too, but you didn't. And I picked Donovan Peoples-Jones, and you had Rondell Moore, and you won. So I'm going to sing a little bit of Big Girls Don't Cry here. I was hoping maybe we could get some Candlebox or something a little bit cooler, but you're coming right out of the gate strong with me.
All right, here's how this is going to work. We're actually going to play Fergie's Big Girls Don't Cry in the background. I'll start out higher, and then I'll bring it down a little bit. But I don't want to go full a cappella. I don't want to go full karaoke because I want some good sound
You don't want
in
people
my brain.
to turn it off.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
So this is going to be right before Big Girls Don't Cry. Evan, are you ready? We're going to start it
for this.
right before. So
people coming in the studio?
that
Because I
was
don't know.
actually impressive.
When rappers say turn the headphones down, I don't really know where I am. I feel like I'm in a studio.
I'm not going to lie, Evan, and I did not expect those vocals to come out of your mouth. That was well done. I appreciate that. I think our audience appreciated that, and we appreciate you joining us for another edition of Fantasy Football Sunday. This was Season 2, Episode 3. Evan Gentry's my partner. I'm Tye Richardson. Again, hey, don't be sitting on your hands today. Go set a lineup and go get a dub. This podcast has been presented by Bet Online.
For show. I'm getting that for show.